Get Warrior Tough, Mental Training 101 with Andrew Wittman and Dutch Coleman. And now back to Andrew and Dutch.
All right, we're back at it. Being grateful. Talking about how complaining literally rewires, physically, medically rewires your brain to become anxious and depressed. Man, oh, Shevance, you shouldn't complain for selfish reasons. We were talking about the venters, Dutch, but then Dr. Robin Kowalski of Clemson University, professor of psychology, says that the next category of complainers are the sympathy seekers. You know the type. The ones that are always fishing for attention with their "I've got it worse than you do" attitude, the good doctor says, and it's just constantly everything sucks. That's their demeanor. Everything's just horrible. It's just there's no good nothing. I mean, they're just sympathies. Woe is me. Everything's terrible. The sky's falling. But when I was growing up, my sisters would say that thing. I'm going to go and eat some worms. Everybody hates me. Nobody likes me. I was like, what are you, a fish? You're going to go eat worms? What are you talking about?
I haven't heard that one.
Well, that's before your time, I'm sure. Because you're a young man.
Yeah.
And then the third category are the chronic complainers. That's those that are living in a state of complaint. They do something researchers call ruminating, or this is what meditating is. You're just rolling it over, and you can't let it go. And basically, it's a means of thinking about a problem again and again and again. And instead of letting it go, you just keep hanging on to it. And you know what happens is it makes things actually worse. And then you get bitter.
Now, those are the people that make you physically ill when you're around them. You just can't do it. You have those visions. You have that little bubble in your that comes up to the side of your head where you're choking them.
Yeah. And
that's those people.
Yeah, and what happens is you go from one when you start on this path of complaining, as we're going to see from the science, what happens is the neurons fire off and the neural connectors fire off. And then what happens is every time that you complain, it's almost like building a superhighway, because you're training the brain to keep firing off in that pattern. And so then by habit, autopilot metaprogramming, using our language, by habit on autopilot, that part of your brain fires off. And this is why you're just miserable and physically sick. And you don't even realize you're doing it anymore because you're doing it on autopilot. It's a habit.
And again, you're making everyone around you sick as well. I mean, I've been around these people, and they are just draining. It's you just can't spend. So the other ones you can choose to be around. You can deal with it to a certain point, and finally you walk away. These are the people you avoid like the plague, so you don't even get in their space. When you see them coming, you go the other way.
Right.
That's these people.
Right. And you know what? And if you're in the other two categories thinking you're okay, you're a couple steps away from becoming the chronic complainer. Because what happens is every time that you vent, or every time that you have that everything sucks demeanor and I got it worse than you do, what you're doing is reinforcing in your brain, you're hardwiring your brain to keep doing it over and over. So actually by virtue of complaining, you're reinforcing the habit of complaining and making it worse.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm sitting here shaking my head, and I'm sure people who are listening are going, yeah, yep, that's it, because these people, this is real. I have different people, bouncing around in my head right now as we talk about these things. Some of them I don't spend much time around anymore. Yeah. Some of them I still see and deal with. But, you got to understand, you have to manage these people because it does have an impact on you. It does affect you. It's almost like a contagious disease. So if you better be aware of it, and you better make sure you're not that person that's causing these issues.
Right. And all this comes from Donald Hebb, what we're talking about right now, neuropsychologist. And Donald Hebb, neuropsychologist, says that neurons which fire together wire together. And here's what that means. He's saying that the groups of neurons connect in your brain as a result of your life experiences. And as you create those experiences of complaining, you're wiring those neurons and they're firing together. They come together and you've created that superhighway. So like whenever you have a thought or a feeling and a thought plus a physical sensation, thousands of neurons are triggered. They fire off, right? And they all get together and they form the neural network. And the brain then learns how to trigger the same neurons with repetitive thinking. That's why you're like, you keep reacting the same way over and over again because you just kept doing it so long that now that's how your brain's wired. And it'll actually take work to rewire it. If you're go ahead, man.
Now, I just want to make sure people are getting this. These are physical acts. This isn't psychological at this point. I mean, although it is, it's also physical.
Right.
I need people to get that we're not talking about just the psychological impact. When he says these neurons are grouping together, they're creating this highway, that means like for real, physically, this is what's going on in the brain
medically.
with the brain mapping. Yeah.
Right.
So this is real. This isn't some imaginary science. With the technology today, they can map the brain and its reactions to different things. And so this is real. This is seen with the imaging. And I need people to get that, because this isn't, people look at psychology and they think these are things you can kind of get around and work your way around. Like again, voodoo, people look at psychology as voodoo, but these things are physically happening to you when you behave this way.
Yeah, and it's not just motivational speaker crap or, self-help, mumbo jumbo. What we're giving you is actually what happens to you in your body and how that connects with your mind and your emotions. And that's what we do here at Get Warrior Tough, man. It's all a CEO of you, right? Who's running the boardroom? All these things are in the boardroom. It's how to get them. Remember, and this is what we say at CEO of you. Your job as CEO of you is to get your board of directors to act in concert for your betterment, not your detriment. They're working in concert anyway. Let's get it in order and get them to work for you instead of against you. And what happens is, if you keep being focused on criticism and being critical and being judgmental and worrying and fretting and being the victim, your mind will keep finding easier ways to bring up those same thoughts. And then what happens is they fire off, the neurons fire together, then they wire together. You've created that physical superhighway, and now you have brain patterns that react in a certain way that you've trained them to and wired them to when situations are presented to you that even seem a little bit similar.
Mm-hmm. No question. Your brain will find whatever it's looking for. And if you keep feeding it, it will find it. And it will magnify it. It will place all your energies and all your attention on that. All your resources will go towards that. And it will build a strong bridge. It will build a strong unit of negativity. And it will affect you, impact you.
Right. I'm going to throw down the gauntlet here, Dutch. Let's get real, okay? Time to get real. If you're saying stuff like, well, I've seen this movie before. This ain't my first rodeo, man. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt and the coffee mug. Red flag. You're rewiring your brain so that physically you will be on the track to anxiety and depression or be depressed. Now, I'm not saying it. The science is saying it. It ain't Dutch and Andrew saying it.
It ain't grandma, it ain't mom and daddy.
And listen, man, if that's how you want to live, I don't judge you. You're just not going to be in my airspace.
And all we can do is provide you with information. Again, you can program yourself however you want. A lot of one of the big issues with people is that people desire to do things a certain way. There's a portion of us in society that desire to do things a certain way, but we lack the information. I'll take it, use myself as an example. A lot of the things that I did naturally. When I linked up with Andrew, I gained an understanding of what was going on. So it was not only that I was able to do it naturally, there could come a point when your natural instincts, it can take you but so far. So when I linked up with Andrew, I gained an understanding. So now not only was it natural, I understood the process. I understood what was going on. So I can then take it to the next level. I can then plan instead of waiting for my natural instincts to take over and even feeling good about that. Now I know what's going on. I can plan ahead. I can be prepared for anything now because I know how things are going to happen. So although I may have been able to survive because I may have had some of these skills naturally, I would never have been able to plan as efficiently and as effectively as I'm able to now with this type of information about the human machine, about the mind, the neuroscience, the information that I gain each day when I'm in the Andrew space. So this is what we're trying to provide for you out there, is that the information, and because once you get the information, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for any of us. We can move forward. We begin to build and reprogram ourselves towards our betterment, as opposed to kind of waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah, and and I love that, because I don't want to just sit around and wait to see what happens next and just take whatever, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. No, you know what? If I want lemonade, I'm going to go out and get some lemons and squeeze them and make lemonade. I ain't waiting for it. If I want lemonade, maybe I want apple cider, so I'll go out and get apples. See, this is a mindset, right? And instead of sitting around complaining about, catch yourself. Catch yourself when you complain. Here's the first thing, is when you get the thought and it starts to come out of your mouth, just stop that. Hey, whoop, and we're going to give you stuff to do so that there's not a vacuum there of complaining, which rolls us right into the next half of this whole deal, which is, here's the flip side, Dutch. That what's the opposite of complaining?
Being gracious, gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude, right? So, and here's the funny thing, is that this thing with the mind, the neuroscience, it works both ways. That gratitude actually physically changes your brain too.
Isn't that amazing?
It is,
I mean, that whole connection, it's amazing.
There's new research that reveals the biology of why gratitude is such a powerful happiness booster. Now, get this. This is out of Inc. magazine by Jessica Stillman. And here's separate studies on the opposite ends of the scale, complaining, and here's another study on gratitude. And what we find is when you're complaining, the neuroscience, not just the psychology, but the neuroscience finds the brain hardwires towards anxiety and depression. And gratitude does the same thing. It hardwires the brain, wires together, wires together, in happiness. Like, it's the exact. So if you're grateful, your brain is wired to be predisposed and be medically happy. If you're complaining, your brain is wired, predisposed, and medically depressed and anxious.
And I know we're coming up on a break, but there it goes again. When you say wired, we're talking about a physical process. We're talking about a physical happening. And this is what's happening in the opposite direction, but it's the same thing is happening. It's a physical thing that's occurring. And again, I know we're probably about 15 seconds from a break. So I'll let you take us out, and we'll finish this up on the other side.
Yeah, because this is very exciting stuff, man. Listen to the Get Warrior Tough radio show with Dutch and Andrew and Dutch.